Hello, and welcome to this Beyond Clean virtual conference. The speakers for today's conference, the sponsors for today's conference, and the Beyond Clean team are all so excited that you're here. If this is your first time joining us for a Beyond Clean virtual event, I want to call your attention to a couple of event functions. All of the windows on your event screen are movable. You can shrink them, you can enlarge them, you can move them, whatever you need to do to create the event feel that works best for you. In the upper right corner is a resources tool. Download conference sponsor information and the resources and links that your speakers have provided for you. On the bottom left, you will see a Q&A or question and answer tool. Any questions that you have for the speaker during each session can be submitted to them using this feature. Our speakers today will bring you a wealth of knowledge, and all of their information can be found in the speaker bio tool on the right side of your screen. Along the bottom are the icons for each of the windows as well. Clicking these will minimize and maximize each window. This will be an action-packed conference, and there will be 15-minute breaks between each of the sessions. So feel free to grab a snack, check on the dogs or the kids, assemble a tray, do some jumping jacks, whatever you need to do before joining us again.
Good morning, everybody. It is so good to have you here with us this morning. I know it's bright and early for some of us this morning, but thank you for joining us. My name is Melanie Perry. I am the Perioperative Clinical Manager for Beyond Clean, and I am also the co-host of the First Case podcast. And I just want to welcome back all of you who are joining us for another Beyond Clean virtual conference and extend a very warm welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. This conference is titled Fast Forward 2022, Accelerating Your Professional Development. And I want to extend a very special thank you to Proper Manufacturing Company for helping make this day of education possible. First Case, my podcast brand, is collaborating with Beyond Clean today to bring the nursing credits. So thank you to First Case for providing those for the nurses out there watching, and also CE credits. They will be available after the conference. Once you have viewed all 6 sessions, you will be redirected to a link to be able to access the quiz and to get your CE certificate. Also, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any issues with audio or sound or video, refreshing your browser will often fix that issue, and you can refresh the browser, log back in, and it should solve that problem for you. Now, in the resources window, we have bonus CE content available in each of today's sessions. We also have an instructional how to access CE certificate resource, and that'll walk you through how to get that CE certificate. And then also our sponsor has provided brochures and product information that you can download and access to get more information. So I invite you to sit back, relax, maybe start that sterilizer load if you're working today. And it's time to get our event started. Kicking off our conference today is Jamie Terran. She is the Vice President of Marketing and Education at Proper Manufacturing Company. Jamie is a seasoned marketer in the realm of life sciences and has an uncanny ability to engage and understand healthcare professionals. She uses her background in professional development, sales, and marketing to assist businesses and professionals in reaching their goals. Her presentation is entitled Empowered, Embracing Your Strengths. So when we reflect on our skill sets, how often do we lead with our strengths? Or join us as we become empowered with ourselves and learn how to embrace our strengths both professionally and personally. Hear Jamie's thoughts and insights to identifying your strengths and the actionable steps you can follow to embrace them in your professional development. Her presentation is going to be very interactive. That Q&A box is going to really come in handy. So feel free to comment, to respond to her questions, and really make this conversational so we can really all benefit and learn. So without further ado, let's welcome Jamie Terran. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Melanie. Thanks so much for having me this morning. I'm excited to get started. I'm on the East Coast, so not too early for me, but thank you if you're joining us from other time zones where maybe it's earlier or even later in the day if you're out of the US. So with that, I want to welcome you to this presentation, Empowered, Embracing Your Strengths. It's really an honor here to start the day. And so I want to just take a moment to set the stage for this presentation and for all the presentations that are to come, and to remind you that today is really about you. It's about you and your personal and professional development. So try to put your phone aside if you can. Make sure to keep a pen and paper handy and engage in the chat box. This presentation in particular is very, very interactive. I'll prompt you throughout when it's really time to grab that pen and paper if you don't have it nearby, so I will remind you. But make sure to keep in mind that this presentation and this day is about you. And I think it's something that's very special about this particular presentation, whole day of conference, talking about professional development. Oops. So we're going to get started with a, we'll call it a poem, something that I was exposed to when I had my daughter. And you can start reading it on the screen. I'm going to read it to you as well. But one thing to remember throughout this presentation and throughout this day is that you are uniquely you. We're going to talk about how to identify your strengths, how to bring a mindset of growth later on today. You're going to talk about how credentials and education can help you to improve and reach your personal goals. And remember that you are unique. You have your goals, and those goals are not impacted or should not be affected by anybody else's goals around you, and they won't be the same as anyone else's goals. So here's a little song from Sesame Street that I find to be particularly impactful for myself, and something I hope my daughter and all of you joining us really integrate into their belief system. So the words are, I am special, I'm 100% me, and that is someone no one else on earth can ever be. That goes for you too. In the whole wide human race, there's no one who could ever take your place. You make the perfect you, and original through and through. And this is something that is very true. And it's true of our strengths, and it's true of the things that we're not as good at, also known as weaknesses. So keep this in mind as you go through and ask yourself questions, and your mind starts to wander throughout the day. We're going to go through a couple of different phases. I'm going to make an introduction of myself. We're going to talk about why all this matters. Then we're going to get to the exercises and how to use the content that we have gathered on ourselves today. And finally, we're going to end with questions. So this is a good time to find your Q&A box, make sure you're ready, and kind of settle in for the presentation. So first, I want to introduce myself. And I want to preface this by saying it's going to be a unique introduction to what you're used to, because we're focusing on being strong and brave and empowered by our strengths. So my name is Jamie Terran. I'm the VP of Marketing and Education at Proper Manufacturing Company. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology, which I've used in the healthcare industry and medical device industry since I graduated over 10 years ago. I was recently appointed the co-chair of the AMI Chemical Indicator Working Group, and I'm a member of the Mentor Committee for Professional Women in Healthcare. These are things that I'm very, very proud of, and they're things that are unique to me. Not many people have this particular organization or set of experiences. I also have weaknesses and things that are not as strong for me. For example, I'm terrible at mental math. I am somebody who has trouble with staying organized at times, and I have to put in place very deliberate processes to keep organized and keep focus on task. And these are things that haunt me. They're things that are in the back of my mind all the time. And if I allowed them to stay at the front of my mind, it would be holding me back. And worse yet, we're often told that expressing and sharing our strengths is inappropriate or socially unacceptable. So those weaknesses continue to build and continue to come to the forefront of your mind. One thing that I want to encourage you to think about is, with these things that we're maybe not as strong at, how do they impact your life? How much they impact your life? And frankly, do they matter at all? For example, for me, being terrible at mental math is sort of irrelevant. It's something from my childhood that stands out and I think about. But the reality is we live in a world where calculators are in our pocket, where there's no pressure when doing mental math as an adult. It's just something that I've carried forward as something that feels as though it may be weighing me down, but does not make any impact. And so I've chosen to let go of that and share that as an example to you. Most of all, I want to remind you that as your brain starts calculating weaknesses instead of strengths this morning, as we're talking about all these things, that weaknesses are not fatal character flaws. They're not meant to be ultimate failures of your lives. They're things that if you choose and if they matter to your life, you can improve upon. And Lynn's is giving an awesome talk later about growth mindset and in general. But remember, all of the things that we talk about today and that you write down as we go through some of the prompts are what makes you uniquely you and you qualified for the career and the life path that you are on. So one thing that's really important when considering strengths and weaknesses is the perspective. And very often the perspective that we carry for especially those things that we think about in a negative way is external. So for example, here is a list of some of my strengths or weaknesses. So a strength that I have is networking and building authentic relationships. However, the way that I do that very often is through social media. And so I could tell myself, I spend too much time on social media. I waste a lot of time on social media. You can see that these are very, very connected strengths and weaknesses, and it's all about perspective. Another example on here is teaching and public speaking. I'm sure there are several people who are on this call and probably every presenter to come the rest of the day that has been told in their lives they talk too much. And so that's another example of where something that could be externally perceived as a weakness could actually use as a tremendous strength in your career, depending on the track you want to go on. There are some other examples here that you can skim through, but I want to encourage you to take this mindset as you move forward and as your inner critic starts to creep in. Keep an open mind and remember that everything is a matter of perspective and that we are taking the time today to talk about you and how you interact with the world and the way that you contribute and the strengths that you bring to the table. So why does it matter? Why are we even doing this? You could all make a list. Why are we devoting an entire hour to having this conversation? Well, first of all, I want to remind you that accomplishments do not speak for themselves, and our strengths are not always apparent to other people. Our society also was built around believing that sharing your accomplishments is immodest, being proud of yourself is immodest, and perceived negatively, like bragging. However, we must be able to share what we're capable of, what we're good at, and how we can contribute in order to achieve our goals. Even I find that people are not comfortable with admitting their strengths to themselves. Within themselves, they do not know what their strengths are or how to utilize them to reach their goals because we're so used to feeling that, oh, it's a humble brag if we talk about ourselves. And the irony of the existence of the humble brag is that often this hashtag humble brag is used in platforms where the entire purpose is to share. Share about yourself, share about your experiences, your accomplishments, and what makes you uniquely you. Self-promotion makes a tremendous difference. Much of the time, when you're in an opportunity, when you're seeking an opportunity, you have to be able to communicate what makes you great. You have to be able to get past the idea that perhaps it's egotistical or that modesty is more acceptable, to be able to genuinely share your skills and capabilities, what makes you you. And our strengths come from these experiences. Our strengths aren't just innate talents. A lot of the time, I find that people think of strengths as something maybe you're born with or that you, savantly are able to accomplish. However, our strengths have come from the experiences that we've had, and they've developed years over years. You've made time investing in these strengths one way or another. They may have come from basic level of kind of who you are as a person, but if you don't make the most of them and you don't use those strengths in the day-to-day, then you're not cultivating the best possible version of yourself. And likely, you're missing opportunities. Another thing to keep in mind is that you don't have to just share about yourself and your strengths at a moment where you're looking deliberately for an opportunity. I think a lot of the presenters today will agree and share experiences that are similar to this, where they just put into the world that they're looking to do something, or they just started doing something. They just started making YouTube videos. They just decided to randomly take a course or a mini certification. And just by taking that step to put into the world, this is something I'm good at, I'm going to follow the path, doors began to open. And self-promotion is not the same as bragging. It's not that overly verbose, out of time placement of sharing your experiences and strengths and skills. Self-promotion is about sharing the facts. It's not making up or exaggerating. It's not looking for an opportunity to just sort of shout to the world everything you're good at. It's looking at the opportunities that exist, like LinkedIn, like other social media, and sharing what it is you are great at. So, for example, a really simple example is, I don't think anyone feels that it's bragging when somebody shares that they've achieved a new certification level. But for every one person that said, hey, I decided to take my career in this direction, it's a strength of mine to build and peer into education and expand myself with formal certifications, which is not necessarily a strength of everybody or something everyone wants to do. For every one person who does share, there's plenty of other people who aren't sharing what they are good at. In fact, if you look on any of the social media platforms where sterile processing technicians and managers and professionals are coming together, more often than not, you see people talking about the kind of failures of their departments, the times that they have the times that they accidentally, sterilized a label applicator, for example, is a very popular post. So remember that all of the self-promotion starts with knowing yourself and sharing it appropriately so that you can achieve all of your goals. So who are you? If you're watching this presentation right now and you're starting to think, you know what, I'm really confident in myself. I know exactly what I am good at, and I can tell you all my strengths right off the bat very comfortably. Let us know in the chat. But if you're somebody who's starting to think, I don't really know myself and I need to figure out more, then this is the presentation for you. So I'd love to hear in the chat who's with us, who's ready to move forward, and the Q&A box, and how you're feeling about all this information that we heard so far. Give you a few seconds. Okay, so with that, we're going to move forward. If looks like we're a little sleepy this morning, Melanie, if you're still able to hear me and all that, just let me know, please. Thank you. So, okay, awesome. We're getting some responses. Thank you for letting me know you're all here with me. Amazing. So we're going to move forward from here, and this is the moment to make sure you have that pen and paper handy. Make sure that you're ready to take notes, make confident, hesitant at the same time. I think I think a lot of people would feel that way. This is the moment that you want to get your pen and paper, that we're going to spend some time with some quiet writing answers to exercises. Not blind quiet, but we're going to keep going and talk about and give some pauses. So let's get started. Give you a few seconds to grab that pen and paper, and we'll get rolling with our very first individual exercise. So our very first individual exercise might be the easiest for you. What are your weaknesses? Now, this is something I want you to think about very honestly. It's probably easiest for those who are joining, but I want you to remember that second or third slide that I shared with you, the parallels of where your weaknesses are actually strengths for you. And as you're writing down what those weaknesses are that come to mind, put a little star next to it. If something inside of you says, maybe I've been using this weakness as an advantage, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to work on that, and let me know in the Q&A when you have some weaknesses. And if you do have any starred weaknesses that you think actually are strengths for you, share them so that other people can start to think about how that may be true for them as well. We have a procrastinator. I'm sure we have many procrastinators today. I'll give you about 30 seconds to work on that. I'm seeing some really good ones coming through, and at the end of the presentation, we can talk about how some of these are actually positives and how some are just room for growth. We have a couple of people who struggle with empathy, which is really interesting and something that is understandable. Multitasking impacts my focus. I'm with you on that one, Cynthia. I sometimes find myself doing 25 things at once as well. Oh, lots of people who struggle with empathy. It's so interesting. Thank you so much for being forthcoming. This is definitely, I really encourage you to look through the Q&A and see that people are sharing and where you can find something that you can relate to as well. Another talker, too much, repeat myself too many times in one conversation. I understand. All these are so good. Definitely write them down. Don't just put them in the chat so that you can have them to work on for yourself later and as we move throughout the presentation. So naturally, what's the next question? What are your strengths? And obviously, this is just sort of the midpoint of the presentation today. So if you feel stalled and unsure, I want to encourage you to use this as a bit of a brain dump. So if you can't come up with real strengths, try to just write what comes to mind when you think about strengths. What comes to mind? Do you admire other people? We're going to go through so many questions that help you answer this question ultimately. But just to get started, what are your strengths? And feel free to share the one you're either most proud of or just what your thoughts are if you feel like you're struggling through this question in the chat box. Again, I'll give you 20 or 30 seconds. Jessie, I love that you saw your weakness as containing emotions and your strength as your passion, because I would say those two things are probably very, very related. I make the best assistant. I'm dependable. Love to help others succeed. That is awesome. Okay, these are amazing. Keep them coming. Write them down. Don't stop yourself at just one. Confidence. All caps confidence. Love it. Thorough, dedicated, goal-driven. You are some amazing folks out here today. Okay, so you've come up with this initial list. I'm thorough, dedicated, goal-driven, confident. These are things that are really popular strengths, right? If you came up with a list of strengths, they're big and generic and they may apply to you, which is awesome, but they apply to a lot of people. The questions we're going to start to dig into from here forward are going to help you get that next level that are really about you and what makes you uniquely strong. So the first question I want to ask you is, what do people ask you to do? What do people ask you for help with throughout the day in general? What are the things that you find people are bringing to you and seeking support with? And you can think about personal experiences or professional experiences. The things that people ask you to help them with are the things that they perceive your strengths to be. And sometimes it's hard to identify the strengths that other people see within us for ourselves. So that's our next question I want you to think about today. What do people ask you for help with or ask you to do? And this can even be within your home. So again, I'll give you a couple of seconds to think through this, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, and feel free to share that in the Q&A. Oh, maybe this one's a little tougher because we're not getting quite as many answers. I want you to think about throughout your day at work. So if you're a technician working in the anything with mobility and traveling and driving, awesome, Iris. If you're somebody who is in a department, what are you find yourself being asked to help with? Are you always being pulled in to ask questions about what the name of each instrument is? Are you somebody who is awesome at understanding an IFU? You can think about it on that small level of detail. That then once you come up with a small level of detail, you can actually expand to what that represents. For example, if you're somebody who is the local kind of dictionary of instrument names, you probably have a great memory that you can use to your advantage. So you see problem solving, providing support or guidance, being organized, being a listening ear. That's an awesome soft skill to have, Willie. What else? That's referencing best practices, standards. That's an amazing and important skill to have. Technical expertise. And as you're thinking about these, and when are you surprised? Is anyone realizing that, oh, people always ask me about this thing, but I never thought of myself as someone who was good at this? Research, hugely important. Even for other departments at the hospital network. So that, Anna, you're probably somebody who is also really good at relationship building. If people are comfortable asking you for assistance when they don't even work directly with you. People always ask me how to do something. What does the IFU say about the instrument or the tray? I love that people are asking their coworkers what an IFU says, because of course they could reference the document, but that shows the level of trust and faith that your coworkers have within you. And so what have you done? Why is it that they feel that level of strength and confidence within you? And again, I really want to encourage you with this question to note when something has come to mind that is surprising or you did not realize for yourself. So the next question I want to ask you to answer is, what do you volunteer for? So similar to what people ask you to do, what you do voluntarily speaks volumes to what you're good at, because we all want to do what we are good at most of the time. If you're somebody who does not like quiet and focus work, you probably don't love working in decon. If you're somebody whose strengths lie in human interaction and social skills and teamwork, you probably like being in the prep and pack world where you're working with a bunch of different people around. Personally, think about the things that you choose to do. So here, of course, there's people running across this. I volunteer for everything. Is that a strength or a weakness, Iris? Here you can see people running. So are you a marathon runner? People who choose to be marathon runners have a certain set of strengths behind them. They're people who can commit to long-term projects, who like the idea of fulfilling something long-term projects. There are people who like to follow probably regimented programming because you have to follow a schedule to train. There are people who probably get a bit of a kick out of that medal at the end of the race. I'm a runner. I like doing races. I get a high from seeing a finish line and getting that kind of gold star. So think about what you do outside of work as well that you're happy to do. Are you somebody who takes your kids to birthday parties? Are you somebody who hates taking their kids to birthday parties? Are you someone who loves to cook? Are you somebody who loves to meal plan? What are the things that you choose to do in your life? So I see people, I like to do large projects, especially for community service. And within that category of community service, what are the details? Like, what projects are you really working on? Do you like to work at the soup kitchen? Do you like to work as like the background manager of projects? Because those are very different strengths that you're bringing to the table. Do different tasks, running to the OR, working out in the gym, even that. Think about how we can break this down. Working out in the gym. Are you somebody who goes, who follows a program? Are you somebody who does the same workout every day? Are you someone who cannot ever do the same workout every day? And so your strengths come in variation and variety. Volunteering for educational sessions. You're somebody who maybe is very motivated by growth already. Outdoor hands-on projects. So that's awesome that you're able to see that you like to use your hands, which makes sense, that you're fulfilling a career that's very hands-on. And something that is important to mention is that if you're realizing that all these things that you're good at and that you enjoy and that you're asked to do and your strengths are not compatible with the activities you're doing in life, you can always make those changes. And that's one of the most powerful things. And we'll get into that as we go forward. So group exercise. I know this has all been a bit of group exercise because you've been so amazing sharing in the chat box, but this is really an important one. What strengths do you see in your colleagues and coworkers? And this is where I want you to share 2 or 3 strengths you see in your colleagues, your coworkers, your friends, your family. Don't limit it just to your colleagues. Volunteer to help SPD students. Awesome, David. Share the strengths you see in others. And then as people start to share the strengths they see in others, grab 1 or 2 that you actually identify with, that you realize you have within you from the list, and put that on your list that you're working on. How are these people that feel confident expressing their confidence? What makes you think they're confident, Darla? Great teamwork, hardworking, and think about how can you exemplify that they're doing these things? What makes you think that your colleague is great at teamwork? What makes you think that they're committed to excellence? Curious, asking a lot of questions. That's a perfect example. My aunt does not hold grudges. That is a very good strength to have, to be able to let go. They're self-starting. They're organized. Are they excellent teachers? Are they motivated? Do they show up to work on time? Just simply timeliness could be a strength for somebody. Are they always prepared? Are people that you work with or are in your lives, you do it without asking? Yep, that's great for self-starting. Do you know people in your life who are extremely detail-oriented, who always check off every list? Do you know people who are great at using planners to keep track of things? Staff wanted to know why behind the processes. I love it. That's awesome. Anna, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Always making sure someone's okay. That is an amazing strength. And so many people talked about empathy and sympathy not being a strength of theirs. So it's great to acknowledge that may be a strength of yours. So I just want to encourage you again, scroll through, make sure you're putting together a list of some of the things that actually speak to you and who you are as a person, and we'll keep going. So now let's talk about what you are most proud of. The things that we're proud of speak to the things that we're good at. And I want to encourage you here to think about what you remember. So sometimes we have a mama bear in our department, so sweet. Sometimes we forget to tell ourselves we're proud of ourselves. Often. If you have children or you're around children or you just remember being a child, people often tell children they're proud of them. However, we don't tell it to adults as much as we should. And so asking an adult what they're proud of is actually often a very difficult question for them to answer. I want to encourage you to think about answering the question, what are you most proud of, by what positive memories do you have from the past? What challenging times did you face at work or at home and come out on the positive side of? And what were the learning opportunities that gave you new strengths? This is one that I think is going to be really about thinking it through. So I'm going to give a full 60 seconds or so before coming in, and then I'll share some of the things that are coming into the chat. Okay, I'm going to come back to you and share something I'm really proud of. Something that in my professional history I'm not so proud of is a time that I left a job because on kind of a quick moment. I wasn't that happy. Another thing came up. I didn't give it that much thought and I just hopped. I just jumped over the new opportunity. And the new opportunity was not the right opportunity for me. And it ended up being a very short professional experience for me. It was a huge learning opportunity, but it wasn't the right decision. And so something I'm really proud of is that I have learned to be a bit more patient in my decision-making and to give myself a little space before taking action to make sure it's very aligned with my goals rather than just acting quickly. So that's an example of something that you may very well have in your life. Another example may be just making the decision to take on a new career path and being brave in that decision. So in the chat, I see people are proud of their persistence. That's an awesome one. Their longevity in the field, the experience they've gained over time. I can multitask with speed. These are amazing things that you can be proud of and directly speak to the strengths that you have. Cynthia, you're being in the field for a very long time shows that you're somebody who is good at committing to long-term projects and experiences. You've probably had to learn so much over that time as the industry has changed and evolved. And these are all strengths that you had to stay in the field and not to become impatient and make a change. Not to say that making a change is not a strength as well. It just shows your unique strengths and experiences. So now I'm going to give you some prompts and you're going to write down answers. And if you feel comfortable sharing them, I'd love to hear them in the chat. But if you want to keep them private, I understand that as well. So first I want to ask you to finish the sentence. I am impressive because. So we're getting a few more proud. I'm most proud of my confidence, comes in front of being doctors, explaining the process, answering all the questions, learning to manage my sensitivity. These are so amazing and definitely reasons to be impressive. So I'll give you a few moments, and please, if you're still working on the question before, don't rush through. You know, we can make sure these slides are available. They will be on recording later for you to come back to it. But answer the question for me. I am impressive because. And I want to really ask that you actually write it out. I am impressive because. My guess is that you've never said this sentence aloud, and you've never said a couple of the other sentences that we're going to talk about, because they're viewed as negative to be bragging, especially, unfortunately, women even more so than men. So I'm going to give you some time now to write out your I am impressive sentences, and we'll come back together in a few seconds. These are so good. I'm going to just start sharing some of them if you're not reading it. I'm impressive because I can help others better understand, not just the how, but the why. I'm impressive because I don't back down when the stop line is needed. When I stop, the line is needed, regardless of how many people don't like it. I'm impressive because of my knowledge. I'm impressive because I'm me. That's so special. I'm impressive because I can take an intense situation and bring a calm voice. I'm impressive because I'm a fast learner. I'm impressive because when my coworker calls me from the OR, I'm right there quickly. Yes, you are adaptable. That is a strength that you bring to the table. Always think about how we can simplify this to feel good about ourselves. Next prompt I have for you is I am capable. I am capable of what? What are you capable of in your life? Go ahead and think that one through, and again, share in the chat. And try to use the phrase, I am capable. I'm impressive because I don't mind working and learning and sharing information that helps build a team. Amazing. You definitely are a team-oriented person, not someone who thrives working more individually, Edward. So let's talk about the I am capable questions if you're ready for them. Or statements if you're ready for it. These are so good. I love seeing them. I'm capable of building up the people around me so we are all strong. Oh my goodness. That is something that is just so inspirational. Capable of working under pressure and multitasking. Capable of being a great infection control coordinator. You all are capable. Capable of learning new things and doing anything I set my mind to. So good. Solving problems. So good. Keep them coming as we keep going through this presentation. The next prompt is I am really good at. And I know you're probably thinking, we've talked about strengths and everything all day. I really want to get these full sentences into your mind, almost mantras that you can come back to remind yourself, I am really good at. What are you really good at? I'm capable of learning other people's jobs, even if it isn't my job. That's a good one, Marie. Sounds like maybe you're having a tough week at work. But an awesome skill to bring to the table. You must be a very fast learner. You must be somebody who's very attentive and good at observing others so that you can learn what they're doing very quickly. So I am really good at. Awesome. I'm capable of motivating my staff. I'm really good at working as a team. I'm really good at understanding and learning something new every day. Really good at communicating. Keep them coming. Now, before we transition out of some of these exercises, I want to invite you to share your 3 newly identified strengths in the chat. I know we went through all these prompts and these questions, but even if you can't come up with 3 new strengths, what is something that you've realized within yourself that you maybe never acknowledged before? We'll just take a couple of seconds. These are awesome coming through. Teaching, explaining processes, helping new coworkers, assessing the situation. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so from here, we're going to talk about why. Why have you spent all this time? We talked about a little bit about self-promotion and how important that is to achieving your goals. But really, let's come back to the why. Why did we just spend 45 minutes talking about this? So first of all, aligning your strengths with your actions is a key to happiness. If you go through all of this and you're starting to think, well, you know, all the things I'm good at are not really part of my day-to-day. I'm really good at speaking and teaching and education, but I don't have the opportunities where I am. That's a flag that I want you to put up for yourself to say that maybe it's time to look for an opportunity. And it's not to say that you need to go quit your job at all. It's time to set a goal to integrate more of what you're good at and fulfilled by into your future. Aligning your strengths with your actions is a key to happiness. Keep that in mind. I said it twice because it's so important. So, when do you actually do this? You know, we have this awesome opportunity, 45 minutes of sharing and being proud of ourselves and putting this out. So when do we actually go about sharing? How do we go about sharing all these new awesome strengths? So first, in sharing settings. So obviously I have invited you to speak up, to use the chat, to use the Q&A to share. That's an amazing opportunity. But also I would encourage you to use the other sharing settings that are available, like social media. Or if you have reviews with your teams or your managers, speak up. This presentation gives you an opportunity to talk about attending this presentation and sharing on social media, just outright, without seeming or feeling uncomfortable. You attended a presentation about embracing your strengths, and now you're going to share them with the world. You don't have to share them so publicly as social media if that makes you uncomfortable, but you can share them with your colleagues or your family members. Just taking that step to be bold and embrace and empower by knowing your strengths is so important. And sharing settings where sharing is considered already the norm is a great way to do it. Another time is celebrations. So always remember that people care about you and your happiness and your accomplishments. And knowing your strengths is a huge accomplishment. Any time where you've learned a new skill or cultivated something that is strong within you is a great opportunity to self-promote and share and be empowered in your self-promotion. And most of all, when you are asked, I see so many people who feel uncomfortable and they kind of suppress their pride. They let their pride get ahead of themselves, or they get worried about what the other person says. But if someone is asking you directly, use the opportunity to shout to the world what you are good at and what you want to use and be in your futures. What of these skills you want to use and what you want to be in your future. If you're somebody who loves education, who loves leading a team, if you're ever asked about that, share those skills. And we could probably give a whole presentation about how and what language to use. Awesome idea. Thank you notes for good customer service can be shared during staff meetings. Amazing. And if you are in the leader position, I really want to encourage you to take this one to heart and remember to ask your teams what they're good at. Maybe that's one key takeaway for you. At the next meeting, ask everyone to share something that's good lately and what they're good at and what their strengths are, if they've received any compliments. So with all of that, I really hope that you found this presentation to be valuable and motivational, and that you learned something about yourself, or at the very least, you feel empowered to share and embrace your strengths. We have about 10 minutes to answer questions today. So I'm going to ask Melanie to come back and join me and kind of help moderate some of those questions. And one question that I have is whether this chat is available to people afterwards, so that if they didn't write down for themselves the notes they made, they can come back and reference it, just in case they didn't have a chance to write it down for themselves.
Let me actually find out about the chat being available, and I'll try to get back to you before we're out of here. I will send a message to somebody, because I've never been asked that question before. But I know obviously the presentation is available on demand after. I'll see if they can see the chat, or maybe if they just need to ask a question, maybe we could get them the information they needed. But I'll find out.
Yeah. Okay, in that case, if it's not an easy answer, then I just want to encourage everyone, if you didn't write down what you were sharing in the Q&A, then jot that down now so that you don't lose it and you can have it to reference later. Okay, so let's jump into some of those questions.
So I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I threw it up in the chat a little bit ago, but the chat that you and I have going on. But it is really hard for me, if I'm being very honest, to ever talk about my strengths, because that's just not what our culture is. It feels like bragging, or it feels like being very pretentious, or just, I don't know. I mean, like, you're not going to get me. I'm not going to sit and talk about them. And if somebody else talks something about me, I'm going to be like, okay, stop. That's just me. But I mean, if I'm really honest about it, I'm thinking I am one of these people. I will do whatever somebody wants. If you ask me a question, if you want me to do it, I will go do it, and I won't care, and I won't be upset. I'm not even going to badmouth you. I'm happy to help. The flip side of that might be that I can't tell people no either. So there's a positive and a negative. But when it comes to that, you know your strengths. How do you keep from being taken advantage when you have strengths like that? How do you keep that from being taken advantage of in the department?
That is a big question. How do you keep from taking advantage of? So, of course, boundaries. So you want to know your limits. I would say if you find yourself in this situation where all of a sudden you're being pulled in too many directions, or you feel that people know they can always come to you, and then you're maybe not able to get your own work done, that's a red flag. So I think the biggest thing with all of this, similar to the way that we talked about weaknesses, if your strength is becoming a weakness, you want to think how much it's impacting your life. If it's impacting your life in the way that you can't get your job done because you're busy helping everyone else, that's time to pause and maybe evaluate what's going on. It could be that, in fact, your department is in need of an educator, and you just found a job for yourself. And so you might want to go and say, hey, I've noticed that I get 10 questions a day. People are having a lot of trouble. I was thinking it might be cool to do a presentation a week, and I'd love to take that on. Or maybe you're one of the people who talked about being asked about IFUs. Perhaps the reason that you're being asked about IFUs all the time is because the IFUs are not accessible, or people are not comfortable with the general format of an IFU, so they're not comfortable reading it. This might be an opportunity to put your hand up and say, hey, I think we need to go through how to access our IFUs, how to read them, how to find the information they need. And if all of that's not available, now you've identified a problem, which you may choose to be a part of the solution, or it may be passed on to leadership or someone else who's more appropriate to solve that problem. So I think if your strength, in short answer, if your strength is becoming a weakness that impacts your life negatively, that's a good moment to put your hand up, identify what's going on, and find that solution, and then present the problem and the solution to someone who can assist you in fixing it.
I think that's really good. And it is. And it's really good to actually have these presentations where you actually identify your strengths. So you're not just maybe necessarily running around burning a candle at both ends and you don't know why. If you can recognize your strengths and you know what they are, then if there is a boundary issue, then suddenly you can also address that too. But without knowing what your strengths are, really, and actually sitting through and working through, these were really good questions, and actually thinking through this. Like, I don't answer the question I'm really good at. I don't answer the question, because it's not how we've been, not how our culture, I think, unfortunately has fed into what's okay to say, you know? So
Yeah.
that was
And I
really
think
good.
and I think that's especially true for women, unfortunately. And that's not just like, oh, you know, trying to throw up gender differences, whatever. That's statistically proven. That's factually proven that it's particularly hard that women are judged more harshly when they're perceived to be bragging than men. And there, you know, there's tons of different ways that impacts them. But we've got 5 minutes, so I want to make sure we get to any other questions that we may have. Any other questions that you have in the chat? If not, we can just keep talking about how to manage doing too many things for other people, because I think everyone has that. I think many people probably have that problem.
Yeah. I think it's the nature of our jobs too. You know, I mean, those of us in sterile processing or those of us in the OR, I mean, we are constantly serving other people. So it's just, we're helping. It's what we do. And I think you know, sometimes maybe we help too much, but it's a good strength to have if you're going to be in those departments for sure. So.
Yeah. Something that I learned about recently that might be helpful to you and to everyone watching is the idea of a servant leader. So a lot of the time we think of serving other people as meaning that we're the bottom of the barrel rather than as the top of the barrel. And I think in an OR is an excellent example as well. I mean, everything, if I can communicate one thing to the sterile processing industry or make an impact, it would be to empower in general. I think that knowing that a hospital will not run if the sterile processing department doesn't show up is so important. If I can make any impact, it's that people understand that and embrace it. And so thinking about it from the idea that as the person serving others, you are actually leading the group. You're, you know, if you're working in an OR, if you're a surgical tech, for example, again, that surgery is not happening without you there. Your job is to take away the limitations or difficulties or challenges that surgeon who's potentially saving someone's life may face. You're that background noise, unfortunately, that facilitates the surgery. And so thinking about it from that perspective may help you to recognize that that can be a strength for you. If you're somebody who tends to feel like they're kind of doing all the background work, but they're not getting the attention, like you might be a servant leader. Joanne says, how do you get over imposter syndrome? So I don't think you ever get over imposter syndrome. I think everyone has a little bit of that. It's part of our culture to kind of diminish or minimize ourselves. But the best way is to do things like this, to get the facts. So if you went through these exercises and maybe we kind of move quickly and have a lot of time to think about them, really go back and do the exercises, make a list. I've even recommended to people, and in the past for me as well, although right now I haven't been doing it as well, is to keep a brag book. And that's one place I do like to use the term brag because it's about you. It's only for you and your experiences. So get a little notebook and start to write down all the things that you've done, that you're proud of, that you're experienced with, that you're strong at doing, what your strengths are. And as they happen, add to the book. Those emails, hey, you did a great job. Somebody told you, hey, thank you so much for helping me out. Some people do well by doing this every day. Some people do well by doing it over time, depending on your strengths. Are you very routine oriented or do you do better with no routine and no pressure? But I find the best way to get over imposter syndrome, or at least push through imposter syndrome, is to know that you are capable and what you're bringing to the table. So, Joanne, does that help answer your question?
Give her a second to respond.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very good answer because I also struggle with imposter syndrome, and I think a lot of us do. But that was a good answer. Yeah. I think that was very thorough.
Awesome.
Okay. Let me. She might answer while we're coming through. We're coming down to the end of it, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But you will get a copy of all of the Q&A, so you will see everything. If there's anything in the Q&A that we missed, you'll get it. And then if anybody else, hopefully, scroll through that Q&A real quick. If you wrote something down, go ahead and grab it just in case it's not available. I don't think it'll be available to viewers afterwards, but scroll through there real quick and catch it. You got a few minutes while I'm going to close it out. So, oh yes, and she said yes, it did answer her question.
Awesome. Yeah, and one thing I'll add, so if I'm going to get a copy of it, or if anyone has any questions, just very quickly, find me on LinkedIn. I am happy to help. If you sat through this presentation, you're like, oh my God, I have no strengths, I have no weaknesses, I don't know myself, send me a message. I'm happy to help you more directly. Not everyone learns in a group setting like this. So
Awesome.
Thank you for having me. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the conference. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jamie, for being here. I enjoyed your presentation. There's a lot that I need to work on myself when it comes to thinking through those strengths and being willing to speak about them. Like she said, you can connect with Jamie on LinkedIn. You can see in her speaker bio, there's a link directly to her so that if you need to send her a message or connect with her, you can do that. We will have a short 15-minute break before the next session. So you'll have time to go to the restroom, grab a snack, do whatever you need to do, maybe some jumping jacks, and then come back ready for the next session. But if you will automatically be redirected. So you don't need to do anything. It just sit back and it will roll you over to the next session. And remember, that CE certificate is going to be available at the end of all 6. You will be prompted over to that, so you don't need to worry about that CE certificate. But we will see you in 15 minutes. Jamie, thank you for joining us. Guys, thank you. We'll see you soon.